At 29, my family's good luck started writing me a bill with my name on it. I'm telling you this now because the kitchen is quiet and my phone is face down and I can't keep it in my head anymore. The fridge hums. The clock on the oven still says 12:30 even though it's not. I tried resetting it twice. Doesn't matter. It freezes there. Half past. Halfway. Like it's waiting. We always called it a blessing. Small miracles. That was my grandmother's phrase. We didn't talk about it out loud unless it was just us, and even then, only in the kitchen, with water on the table and the back door cracked an inch. My family rules were simple. Use it when you must, not when you want. Never say thank you to an empty room. Never bargain. Don't let outsiders name it. When something gets placed in your hands by no one you can see, don't look up. It wasn't big stuff. We didn't win lotteries. We didn't levitate. It was small things. Lost things showing up where we swore we'd checked. Keys sitting on a windowsill we didn't have yesterday. Doors opening without a handle turn when our arms were full. Windows we forgot to lock staying shut anyway. The coffee I spilled missing the light shirt and finding the tile. Accidents missing by inches. Anyone else would call it luck. We had a different word. We didn't say it much. I grew up with that. My mother tucked a few folded bills into my coat at night and said, "For bus fare when the fare is gone." I'd find the money still there days later, even if I took the bus every day. When I was 8, I fell hard off my bike. Straight over the handlebars. I should have broken my teeth. I didn't even split my lip. I stood up with a circle of grit on my chin and nothing else. The gravel made a sound in my mouth like chewing ice. My knees bled a little. By morning, no scabs. Just 2 short, pale lines on my knee like the start of a tally. I didn't think about it then. We had family stories about it. My grandmother kept a shoebox under her sink with a deck of greasy playing cards and an elastic band and a little green ledger. Not the money kind. A list of times when it had stepped in. We'd thumb through on holidays. Your uncle's car that time, she'd say. Your aunt in labor. The window that wouldn't break. The bus that waited at a red light after green. It was always something small. It always felt like it cost nothing. Then, this spring, I was walking on Bernal and a delivery van jumped the curb because the driver sneezed. I know that's what happened because we talked after. I saw the front grille coming up and I saw a penny on the ground. It was heads up. It had a scratch across Lincoln's face like a scar. I bent for it. The van clipped my shoulder hard enough to spin me, and it missed me by literal inches. It hit the parking meter and knocked it over, and the parking meter hit a guy on a scooter. The guy broke his arm. The van cracked its headlight. I had a bruised shoulder and a shiny penny in my pocket. I stood there in the street, dizzy, listening to the driver say, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And the guy on the scooter say, "My arm! My arm!" My head felt full and light and hollow all at once. I touched my shoulder and felt a line there, thin and smooth, the kind of pale line you get from an old cut that healed too well. That night, it was a mark. Just a mark. Another tally. A week after that, I pulled apart the pantry to find a bag of rice I knew I had. I found a journal instead. It was under the shelf, slid back into the wall gap where the plaster was crumbly. The cover was oilcloth. The elastic had dried stiff and snapped. Inside were entries in my grandmother's hand, and other hands too. Dates going back to 1952 and stops at 1989. The entries weren't daily. They were little blurts. Notes. Found bracelet. Window latched itself. Child safe. 30. My grandmother had a neat hand. She wrote 30 like it hurt her to write it. There was a cassette tape in the back pocket. 2, actually. Scotch tape labels, rules, and come 30. I don't own a cassette player. I Googled how to play them and ended up buying a plastic converter that looked like a toy. That night, I sat at this same table, put the little foam earbud in my ear, and pressed play. My grandmother's voice came through over a low hiss. It was like she was in the room, cut down into a thread. "If you open this," she said, "then you're old enough and I'm not around to make coffee about it. The blessing isn't simple. We never paid. It keeps the tab. Don't name it. Don't haggle. Don't ask for what you can live without. Keep water by the bed. If a door opens where there's no handle, go through, but leave it open behind. If you see a bargain, don't." She coughed. Papers rattled. When we turn 30, that's when they count. She didn't say who they were. She never would, not on a tape. She had sense. Some of us pass it. Some of us run. Some of us pay it all ourselves and end it. I don't judge. But know what you're doing. If you pass, you say the words and you mean them. If you run, you better know who it goes for. It always takes what you love if you run. If you pay, you pay. No one else. The ledger tears up at that. Then she told a story about her brother, my great-uncle Joe. How he went into the woods the night before his 30th and came back without a voice. And how he died anyway 2 weeks later, his wife watery-eyed, saying she heard footsteps on the porch every night at 12:30. My grandmother said the number like she was spitting it out. I took the earbud out and sat and listened to the apartment breathe. The clock on the stove was wrong. The microwave said 12:32. My phone said 10:18. I rubbed my knees where the tallies are. I could count 6 on the left, 5 on the right, if I was honest with myself. If you'd asked me before about the lines, I would have said bike spills and cuts. Random, nothing. But I ran my finger over them and I thought of the van and the penny and the skein of coincidences behind me like fishing line I never noticed I was trailing. The next night, I picked up when the unknown number called. It was midnight. It rang once. It didn't vibrate. It just rang, quiet and serious, like a book closing. I said, "Hello?" And a voice that wasn't a voice said, "Favors owed." That's all. It sounded like wind through a bottle. It sounded like my name when said from the next room. It sounded like whispers in church when you're supposed to be quiet. It made the skin behind my ears prickle. The line clicked. The oven clock stayed at 12:30. I stopped using it. Or, I tried. That was the plan. If I never asked, maybe the tab would stay low. I walked instead of taking the bus. I took the long way home to avoid crosswalks that felt wrong. I held onto my wallet with both hands and left my keys in the same bowl by the door and watched them like a hawk. It didn't matter. I stepped into the street one morning and a cyclist braked hard to miss me. He went down. His wheel bent like a cartoon. I could have stepped back onto the curb, but a woman moved aside from me without looking up, and I ended up in the space she'd opened, and the car that would have got me drifted instead and clipped the cyclist's bag. He swore. Blood ran down his shin. I said sorry 5, 6 times. He wouldn't look at me. The light changed, and a bus waited for me, even though the driver could have gone. I didn't wave. I kept my face down. My keys were in my pocket when I got to work, even though I left them in the bowl. At lunch, I listened to the second tape. Come 30. It wasn't my grandmother this time. It was my Aunt Nora's voice. She died when I was 15. A stroke. On the tape, she sounded young and unsure. She listed dates. She said, I passed it to Layla. I told her, half mine, half yours, with her eyes open, like the book says. I put my hand on her head, and I meant it. I never told her what I did. She was 11. I'm sorry. She cried. The tape clicked and hissed and went quiet, and then her voice again, harder. If you run, it takes what you love. Ask me how I know. She didn't say what she lost. She didn't have to. I stopped the tape and looked at the family photos on my fridge. I grew up with those pictures. We all did. Always lined with us. Weddings, cookouts, birthdays. Dad smiling under a flannel cap, Mom in a red dress, me in a sandbox with my mouth open, my cousins stacked like cordwood on a couch. I kept a photo strip of me at 21, holding a beer, at the corner with a magnet. In that strip, my face is sharp and young. Behind it was a group shot from my grandma's kitchen, everybody elbow to elbow. I noticed something wrong with that one. Grandma's 30-year-old nephew, Dan, was faded. Not all the way, just pale around the edges. The others were fine. His shirt was clear and his hands were clear and his face was soft like it wasn't in focus. I took the magnet off and held it up to the light. My mom at 30 in another picture had the same softness. She was fine in real life. She'd made it, I thought. She'd made it. Then I remembered she was 31 in that photo, maybe. I looked at the back. No date, just a greasy fingerprint. The unknown number called again that night. Midnight. One ring. Favors owed. Click. Oven clock stuck on 12:30. Microwave too. I pulled the breaker and turned it back on. 12:30. My wristwatch stopped at 12:30 during dinner. I shook it and it ticked once and died. I put it in the drawer. I tried a ritual out of the journal. There were instructions on a page torn from a yellow legal pad in my aunt's handwriting. If you want to shave the debt, she'd written, 3 truths, 3 coins, 3 drops. Crossroad. Dawn. Silence. I set my alarm for 5:12 and walked 10 minutes to where 2 streets cross at an odd angle. It was already getting light. I wore my hood up. I brought 3 pennies, bright ones, and a pin. I stood in the empty street and whispered 3 things I didn't want to say. I said I was afraid. I said I should have stopped the van. I said I loved someone I hadn't told yet. I put the 3 pennies one by one on the white paint of the center lines. I pricked my finger and let 3 drops fall. It felt stupid. It felt wrong. A car came, fast. I stepped back and it rolled over the pennies without touching them. They didn't even rattle. They just weren't there when it passed. When I looked, they were on the sidewalk behind me, the tools of the thing. The car slowed at the next stop sign like a hand on its back and then sped away. I went home and soaked a paper towel in the sink until it swelled, and then squeezed it out, and watched the water spiral down like it was counting. The next day, I drove to see Aunt Ruth. She's 61. Her hands are always busy. She makes quilts and puts them on every couch and chair like she's insulating the house. She made coffee even though I said I'd be quick. Her husband watched a game in the other room. I could smell onion soup and laundry. Photos lined the wall up the stairs. Kids, cousins, wedding kisses, sunburned faces at lakes. She saw me looking. "You hearing the calls?" she asked. "They say, favors owed," I said. She nodded. "They always have the same mouth." "What did you do?" "I passed it." She looked at her folded fingers like they were someone else's. "To Jordan." He was 9. He stared at the TV and I put my hand on his head and said it. "Half mine, half yours." He didn't blink. He's 32 now. He has lines, like yours. She reached and poked my knee. Got these yet, when you should have a scar? I nodded. 11. You counted. That's good. Some pretend they're scratches. Not good. Feeds it when you lie. She got a picture frame off the shelf and held it out. Look. It was an old photo from my mother's 30th. Balloons. A cake. My mom with both hands on the knife. Her face faded around the edges. The candles were clear. My dad was sharp. Her mouth looked like it was almost there and almost not. It's true for any of us, she said. The faces go pale at 30 in the pictures. It's a warning, I guess. Or it's just what we notice when we're trying to make patterns. Doesn't matter. It's always 30. What about running? I asked. You didn't. No, she said. Your Aunt Nora did. She ran. She made it to the end of the block. Her boy died in his sleep that night. Caught death, they said. Who knows? We do. I swallowed. The air felt thick. There are always 3 doors, she said. Pass, run, or pay yourself and end it. The last one takes guts I don't have. My grandma tried it. She went out quiet while peeling apples. That picture of her after? It's the only one clear at 30. It stops there. She poured me more coffee without asking, and I didn't say thank you out loud. I nodded. She put a hand over mine and squeezed. Don't try rituals from paper. It doesn't like games. I went home and put away my pennies. I had this idea that I could starve it. I ate cheap, small meals. I made my bed perfectly so it couldn't hide anything in the sheets. Childish. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. It still rang at midnight. Favors owed, the not voice breathed. Click. The messages started showing up in the wood. The first one was carved in my apartment doorframe. It was shallow, like a thumb writing in a stake. PAID. Right at my eye level, on the hinge side. It had a line through it, a neat line of crossed off. The next night, on the other side of the frame, DUE. I ran my thumb over the word. The wood was smooth around the letters. The cuts were clean. No splinters. It looked old and new at the same time. It felt like putting my finger into someone's mouth and feeling teeth. I put painter's tape over it and went to bed with the lamp on. I went to my sister's house 2 days later. She called me and said her baby wasn't sleeping. There was scratching under the crib. I brought a bag of flour. She laughed at me and let me put a ring of it around the legs. We sat on the floor and listened. Her husband was out of town. The baby gurgled and slept warm and heavy. 11 minutes after midnight, the baby's eyes opened without focusing, and something creaked under the crib like a knee popping. The mobile didn't move. The air didn't move. The flour had prints in it in the morning. Not feet. Not hands. Like pressed coin edges. Like tally marks. We cleaned it up before she could see. We didn't say anything, and then we said everything at once in the hallway, and she cried. And I lied and said, "It's nothing." And she said, "You always say that," and I couldn't meet her eyes. That same day, I saw a message carved into their back door. P-Aid. The P was long. The A had a broken crossbar. I knew whose door had the matching DUE. The coincidences got sharper. I was in the grocery store and reached for a carton of eggs, and someone knocked into me from behind. My carton fell and somehow stayed closed. The guy next to me's carton didn't. 12 yolks broke like little suns. He cursed, and I said sorry, and he wouldn't look at me, and I thought of a ledger in someone's hand. I told myself it would pass. I counted days. I had 8 weeks, and then 7, and then 6. The clocks kept stopping at 12:30. I stopped wearing a watch. I took the mirrors down because I caught myself talking to my face at night like it would talk back. I put the tapes back in their shoebox and pushed it under the sink like that would push the truth away. My cousin Layla invited me to her kid's birthday. When I got there, her kitchen had 3 new quilts and the back door cracked and water on the table, and I realized she knew everything without having to hear the tapes. Agaz. She looked at me like she could see the numbers on me. Her son blew out 5 candles, and I looked at him and thought of Aunt Nora's tape and felt sick. Later, when I went to pee, I ran my hand along the doorframe out of habit and felt letters. They were small. Paid. 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 A row of them like stamps. I laughed without humor and washed my hands hard and stared at my face. If I squinted, the edges of my cheeks looked soft, like in the fridge pictures. I stopped squinting. I tried one more thing from the journal. There was a note about salt. A line of salt at the threshold keeps the counters out. Someone wrote in 1971. I poured a line at my front door. There was wind that night, and the salt drifted in a little pile by morning. My doormat had a wet heel print on it that didn't match my shoes. We visited my father's grave like we do every June. He didn't die at 30. He made it long enough to give me and my sister this mess, and then his heart gave out shoveling snow. I told him everything anyway, out loud. My sister smoked and stared into the grass and said, "I have a new scar," and showed me a thin, pale line on her elbow that she swore wasn't from anything. I counted her lines in my head and wanted to throw up. The unknown number called. Midnight. Every night. Always the same whisper. Favors owed. Sometimes it sounded amused. Sometimes it sounded bored. Once it said my name. I sat up in bed with my hands over my ears like a child. The oven clock said 12:30. The microwave, 12:30. My phone lit my face, and I saw mine in the black of it and thought of the fridge pictures and my grandma peeling apples. And I said out loud to the room, "I'll pay." The light bulb in the hall popped. I laughed. It sounded like a cough. In the end, it wasn't complicated. The end is never complicated. The hard part was the last week. Everything tightened. People near me started misstepping. The bus driver forgot to stop and a kid missed a test, and I felt it like I'd pushed him. A tile came loose in the entryway at work and a woman turned her ankle and I stepped past and I wanted to cut my own foot open to even it. I started carrying cash and giving it to strangers to feel like I was paying something, anything. It didn't change the calls. It didn't move the DUE. The last day before my birthday, I got a message from Aunt Ruth. She left me a voice memo because the calls made her nervous. 3 doors, she said. Be sure. If you pass it, say it clean and put your hand on their head and keep their eyes open. If you run, run hard and don't look back and know what it will take. If you pay, you go quiet. It's not bad. She peeled apples. She smiled. It was one clean cut. She sniffed. I love you. Come by for cake if you feel like it. I spent the day with Maya. I haven't said her name until now. That was my sin. I loved her and didn't say it because saying it felt like pointing a weather vane at a storm. We went to the park. We ate dumplings out of the carton on a bench. She tucked her hair behind her ear and watched the kids on the jungle gym and asked me why I kept checking the time. I showed her my dead watch and told her the story in little pieces. She listened. She didn't laugh. She held my hand and said, "Okay, and then? What do you want to do?" Her voice got small near the end. I think she knew the answer before I did. We walked the long way to my place. The messages on the door frame were darker. DUE carved twice, deeper. Someone had tried to sand it once. It never helps. I put water on the table. I cracked the back door. We sat in the kitchen. The oven clock said 12:30. We hadn't even eaten dinner. The sunlight was still in the alley. I poured us tap water and watched the bubbles climb the sides of the glasses. They made thin clinks like distant bells. I took the shoebox out and put the tapes on the table. I took out the ledger and ran my finger down the lines. Window latched itself. Child safe. Bus waited. Van missed. Each line had a tick next to it, then another stick drawn through 5. My grandmother's hand, my aunt's hand, my mother's. They all counted in the same way. 5 tallies and a slash, and then more. Maya watched my face. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking there were always 3 doors," I said. "I'm thinking I can't run. I'm thinking I won't pass it. You met Layla's kid. He's 5. You could pass it to someone older," she said. "A cousin. Jordan has kids. He's a grown man. He might even want it." I shook my head. The phrase sat in my mouth, heavy. Half mine, half yours. I'd heard it on the tape. I knew what it would feel like to say it. I could feel the place on a head where my hand would go. The bones under skin, the soft hair. I couldn't do it. I saw my Aunt Nora in my head, crying in a cassette tape that lived in a shoebox under a sink, and I couldn't. "Then don't run," she said. "Don't run," like she was saying. "Don't go." Her face changed. The edges of her eyes went shiny. She took my hand like she could hold me to the chair with skin and fingers, and maybe she could. I wanted to tell her everything at once. Childhood. The bike. The penny. The flower prints under the crib. The cut on my knee that wasn't a cut. The way the word DU felt under my thumb. I wanted to say I loved her in a way that would nail it to the table. I wanted to say her name like it would do anything at all. So I did the small things instead. I got up and made grilled cheese. I buttered the pan with my finger because I couldn't stand to use a knife. I cut the sandwiches on the bias because that's what I always do. Maya laughed a little and said, "You cut diagonals like you're in a diner." And I said, "Yeah," and flipped them, and the bread didn't burn even though my mind was nowhere near the stove. The blessing. The curse. The call waiting. We ate. We washed our plates. She dried. I put them away wrong and she fixed them without a word. We sat at the table with our hands wrapped around our glasses like we were keeping them warm even though they were cold. We listened to the kitchen. The clock ticked, but it wasn't right. It stopped and started. It always died at 12:30. I could feel it in my teeth. "I'm gonna pay," I said. It was easier to say than I thought it would be. It was like saying I was tired and going to bed. The truth sat down. It took off its shoes. "I'm going to end it." Maya's face did a thing I wish I could draw. Her mouth made a small O and then closed. Her eyes didn't spill for a second. Then they did. She nodded like she'd rehearsed it. "Okay," she said. "Okay." She breathed like she was trying to even out. "Tell me how." "I don't know." I took the ledger and flipped until I found the note about Grandma and the apples. There wasn't much. A date. A line that said, "If you pay, you say it and you mean it," in my grandmother's hand. The words were smudged where someone touched them. Maybe her. Maybe my mother. No one else, it said. It might have said, "No one else pays," or it might have been, "No one else knows." The pencil was faint. The unknown number called at midnight on the last night. It didn't ring once and stop. It rang and rang. The sound was patient. Maya squeezed my hand until my fingers hurt. I picked up. "Favors owed," the not voice said. "Close." "I know," I said. "I'll pay." "Due," it said. "Paid," I said. "By me." There was a pause. If you can call what it was a pause. The kind of pause you feel in your throat before you sneeze. The oven clock clicked to 12:30 on its own, even though it had been wrong all day. Nothing else. No thunderclap. I half expected lightning to split the table. It didn't. It never does. It's not a movie. I put the phone down on the table. I stood up. My legs were steady. I turned the back door latch and left it cracked. I put water in the middle of the table. I did the rules like a ritual. You do the rules because they make you feel like you have something to do with what's happening. I took the salt and poured a circle around my chair and then brushed it away with my hand because no games. Not now. Maya stood. She put her hand on my chest. She said, "Tell me you love me," and it hit me in the body how she said it. I said it. I said her name, and I said it. I said I loved her. It felt like I was borrowing someone else's muscles. My jaw hummed. "Okay," she said. She kissed me, soft and quick. "Okay." We didn't get a show. The stove didn't burst. The pictures didn't fall. The apartment didn't go cold. It was just this sense that the space between the table and the door stretched and pulled like taffy and then snapped back. Something leaned in. The air got heavy in the way it does before it rains in August. The doorknob twitched on its own, once. It made a tiny hiss sound like a mouse laughing. The line in the doorframe that said "Doi" got shinier like spit on it. "I'm here," I said. I didn't know if there were words. The tape had been vague. If you pay, you say it and you mean it. Fine. I could say things. I have always been good at it when it's too late. "Take what's mine. Leave the rest," I said. "End the line." That felt wrong. I corrected without thinking. "End the line with me." The words tasted like copper. The not voice came from the phone, and from the door, and from the oven clock, and from behind my ears. "Paid," it said. Behind my ribs, something shifted. Something old and soft and familiar peeled up like a sticker and lifted. There was a pressure at my throat, and I could taste metal and apples and dust. My knees didn't buckle. My hands didn't shake. It wasn't pain the way you think of it. It was remembering every sharp miss, the bike and the bus, the coffee and the dropped eggs, the penny at once, like they were rewinding through me. It left holes behind where the tallies used to live. I felt each pale line on my knees go warm and then cool. My shoulder ached and then stopped. Maya said my name and I wanted to tell her it was fine, that it didn't hurt, but my mouth wasn't good for words anymore. It was good for breath. I focused on that. In, out. The smell of buttered bread still hung in the kitchen. The fridge hummed. A car went by outside with bass turned up and we heard it like a heartbeat. The back door creaked a little. The room was dark and bright at once. The oven clock said 12:30. The microwave said 12:30. My phone screen showed nothing. Blank. No call. No timer. No record. That felt correct. If you pay, you pay. No receipts. I reached for Maya's hand and held it. She was warm. She was crying and she was not sobbing. She was quiet. I liked that. The quiet. The kitchen. The water on the table. The back door. The rules. It all came together like you lay out your clothes before a trip. Paid, the not voice said again, softer. It sounded satisfied. It sounded finished. The DUE on the doorframe went gray, like ash. The pad next to it went clear, like a window. I could see the wood grain through it. The tallies on my knees cooled. The oven clock ticked over. 12:31. I breathed out once more. It felt like setting down a heavy grocery bag and finally flexing your fingers. It felt like being done. It didn't hurt. It wasn't a trick. It was an end. I squeezed her hand and couldn't find the strength to say goodbye in a way that would be enough. So I just looked at her and hoped my eyes did it better. Her mouth moved and she said my name again and again like it would tie me to the chair. Something let go. The last thing I heard was the clock starting again. I hope you enjoyed that one. Sometimes these stories stay with you longer than you expect. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe for the next night's story. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe watch another before the lights go out. See you in the next one.